From sniffles in the spring to full-blown anaphylactic shock, allergies can have a wide range of reaction. Why can some people walk through a field of flowers with a lobster roll while others will have to take a trip to the hospital because they got a bee sting or they don't like shellfish? Today, let's talk about allergies. Welcome to a Healthier Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Gatica, and every other week we dive into topics that help you live your healthiest life. We cover everything from nutrition and mental health to physical health and social media trends that impact your wellness. Today, we're joined by Dr. Michael Kopernik, who is a Senior Medical Director of Commercial Markets, to break down allergies, what causes them, and what are some ways that we can relieve the symptoms. It's good to have you with us, Doc.
No, it's nice to be here with you, Chuck, and really it's this is an interesting topic for me because I spent 30 years as an emergency physician, and so we saw all the various iterations of allergies, and all the way from anaphylaxis and severe reactions to the minor reactions that people suffer on a regular basis.
So that's interesting. You say, and other reactions, meaning there are other severe reactions? Because you think of anaphylactic shock, that's it, EpiPens, and going at it. But what else?
I think just before the anaphylaxis is clearly defined for us.
Yeah.
And it's really loss of blood pressure, difficulty breathing that people get. But before, there are different grades of severe reactions. That generalized rash that people get, where they turn bright red, they get some swelling of the lips and tongue.
Yeah.
That isn't quite as life-threatening as the anaphylaxis, but it really is, to the individuals experiencing it, is devastating. So we see a lot of those folks appropriately in the emergency department.
So there's this line, this continuum, right, of all kinds of different reactions. But let's start at the beginning. What is an allergic reaction? What is an allergy?
The way I think about it, it's your body's way of telling you that it doesn't like something.
Okay.
And so the true allergy really results in the body's immune system developing a sensitivity to something you ingest or come in contact with or inhale. And so it is. It's a sensitivity reaction of the immune system. It's related to the immunoglobulins, and everybody has a different constitution for things that they react to.
Can they come and go? I mean, can I touch a certain kind of paint or turpentine and have an allergic reaction and never have it the next time?
That's a tough question. So when you think about getting the allergic reaction, first thing is the sensitivity.
Okay.
You have to be sensitized. You touch it the first time, you get your first bee sting. You don't necessarily have an generalized allergic reaction. You get a bee sting, you're reacting to the venom. That's a local reaction, not necessarily an allergic reaction. But your body recognizes the bee venom as foreign and develops an immunity to it. So when you get stung the next time, the immunity occurs, the immune system kicks up, and it releases histamine. Histamine is the chemical that causes all the symptoms. So you get the histamine reaction from the immune cells. It causes the reaction. What does histamine cause? The continuum.
Okay.
It's runny nose, itchy eyes, all the way to anaphylaxis. A couple other pieces that are important there is the amount of allergen you become exposed to. A little bit tends to be a lesser reaction. A lot tends to be a greater reaction. Not saying you can't get one bee sting and go all the way to anaphylaxis.
So if we talk about common allergies, because we think of springtime, we tend to hear words from commercials and other things, antihistamines, right? Antihistamines. So springtime comes, I'll get sniffles. Yeah. I didn't used to get them when I was a kid, but is that the kind of the entry point of what we're talking about for the most common?
The common are surprisingly grasses, dust mites.
Okay.
Grasses, pollens are very common. I don't know if you've ever. I was really surprised. I was in the South several years ago, and right in springtime, pollen over everything.
All over the car windshields,
Right. Well, imagine that being in the air here and breathing that in. First time you don't notice, second time you get some sniffles. And that's the body's reacting, the immune system reacting. Remember, one of the things that happens when we get the sniffles is that the body is bringing mucus, which contains the immunoglobulins to fight off any infection that you might get. And that's really the function of the nose and the respiratory system.
So for me, if I didn't have this issue, it was really more than just a kid, even through 20s and 30s maybe. And now, is it because I'm being exposed to this stuff more and more in the spring?
That's the theory. You have higher levels of immune globulins, and now you're more exposed to it. And as a result, when the spring comes and you're exposed to those things that you're allergic to, you have a reaction. Fortunately, it's a minor reaction. It's annoying.
Yeah.
And you might take an antihistamine.
Some
for
over-the-counter thing, yeah. And I suspect it also has a lot to do with the context of where you're living, right? Because when I was in my 20s and 30s, I maybe lived in a place that didn't produce all the pollen, or the particular tree or grasses weren't there, and now I'm in that spot, right?
Yeah. And we see it a lot when people are out cutting the grass in the summertime. Especially in the spring, we used to see folks coming in with allergic reactions, pretty severe, who are out cutting the grass for the first time or second time in the year, and it's a high volume of pollen and grass, and causes the allergic reactions.
Well, that's one of those chores that a lot of us can't get away from, right? So how do all of us look to minimize symptoms, especially if it's something we know we have to do? We have to live in the house we're in. We may have to mow the yard once a week, yeah?
Well, some people wear masks when they mow the yard. I think masks have become actually more acceptable, and it's not uncommon to see people use it to prevent allergies and upper respiratory infections. So, and then try to do it at a time when it's not as hot and humid, where the pollen tends to stay and the grass fibers tend to stay on the ground. Or hire somebody to do it, Chuck.
Well, there's that part, but it's still going to blow around, right?
It is.
And when you talked about everything being covered, it hit me a little late in the game here, but I remember being at a veterinarian because our dog was having some kind of what looked like allergy to me. And sure enough, that's what it was. And the vet said reflectively to me as I was leaving, we're seeing more of this in pets. I get out to the car and the windshield is just covered in pollen. And I thought, well, there you go. The vet also knew something I didn't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't think pets were immune to getting allergies, but pets are a common source of allergy. And it's really devastating to people who own pets and become allergic to them. Cats and dogs particularly, the dander does cause a lot of allergy for people and a lot of distress. People love their pets. I love my dog. And
me too.
If I became allergic to my dog, I'd have to go.
Well, I just saw a study that said, most people consider their best friend their dog.
Right.
My wife didn't mention my name, directly, but I'm kind of thinking, that could be true.
Yeah.
What is it about oodles and other dogs? Do other dogs that we hear are hypoallergenic, they don't produce dander, or it's just a different kind? They don't produce it. Okay.
No, that's right. I would imagine they still produce a small amount, but it's not anywhere near as much as some of the other dogs. And people seem more sensitive to cats than dogs. And people who are allergic to cats, they walk in a house and cat might be outside and they know the cat's been there. They start with the tearing and the runny nose, and they know right away. Cats are tougher, I think, for people with allergies.
So the over-the-counter remedies are there. We know we can run and get something for that seasonal allergy, but when we start to get to the point of major symptoms, I guess I've never thought that this was a thing I need to watch out for in my own life, that this could progress to a level where I've got to go to see an ER doctor. But what major symptoms? What are we doing about?
We can't predict we didn't talk about medications either. We should probably talk about penicillin allergy, but we can't predict. A couple of points I want to make about that. We can't predict who's going to get severe reactions and who's not. But if the reactions get worse, that's the time to see somebody, get tested, find out what you're allergic to, and see what your options are there. Is it to continue over-the-counter medications? Maybe you can avoid some foods or some grasses or something like that. So I think those are options for us to think about when we go get tested. We don't want to wait until something terrible happens. I think if you get a rash, you get some swelling of the lips, for sure those symptoms require evaluation by an allergist, because those seem to be the kinds of reactions that are progressive for people, and they also respond well to immunotherapy, those shots that people get. Immunotherapy, probably getting ahead of ourselves, but immunotherapy is small doses of what you're allergic to have the body build up immunity.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's what you're getting. So they mix the formula based on what you're allergic to into your shot, and then you get that regularly. We've been hearing a lot about peanut allergy and earlier exposure for infants to peanuts and peanut butter as a possible way of reducing peanut allergy. And that's something worth discussing with the pediatrician, particularly if there's a family history of peanut allergy or something you're concerned about. I always advise people to talk it over with their pediatrician or family doctor, that kind of work that's being done on introducing peanuts earlier.
Yeah.
Other nuts are good, are allergens, and tree nuts are commonly allergens for some people. And let's talk a little bit about medications.
Yeah,
too.
because we get that question. If you get in the hospital, it's, do you have a penicillin, latex gloves, right?
Penicillin allergy is really interesting. Most people find out they have a penicillin allergy when they're kids, and they go to the doctor for an ear infection, and they get amoxicillin. Amoxicillin is also associated with a rash. And nobody can tell you if you get the amoxicillin rash or it's a true allergic reaction at that time. So when you're a kid, they tell you you're allergic to penicillin. And what the allergists are doing now is they're testing people for penicillin allergy. And in a very high percentage of the individuals they test that were told they have penicillin allergy when they're a child, they don't have penicillin allergy. And that's really important if you're in a position where you have an infection, and penicillin is a good treatment. And penicillin's common, it's been around forever, it's a great drug. And so knowing later that you're not allergic to penicillin when you thought you were can be very valuable. So I would keep that in mind. Tell people to ask their family doctor or ask their parents, when did you diagnose me as penicillin allergic?
That's an interesting one because my wife has it listed on her MyChart, and somebody asked her, she says that. I'm not quite sure how far back that goes, but it goes back a long time.
Right. And so if there's a need, then it makes sense to do penicillin allergy testing. It's very effective and safe.
So anything else? Because we'll hear about tree nuts, right?
Yep.
I sure wish we could have peanuts on an airplane, but can't do that anymore.
Right.
So what about shellfish?
Shellfish are big.
Yeah.
People get shellfish allergies, shrimp, lobster.
Yeah.
Those are common allergies. And food, and the reaction, we have to distinguish food allergy and food intolerance. Food intolerance to me are things you eat that upset your stomach, not a true allergy. So if you eat, I eat mushrooms. Mushrooms cause me to have an upset stomach, but it's not an allergy. I've been tested for mushroom allergies. I'm not allergic to mushrooms. It upsets my stomach. That's a food intolerance. A food allergy is like shellfish, causes the same reaction we're talking about. Histamine release, symptoms.
Wow.
Common molds are another one, and cheese. Some people are allergic to molds and cheese, and their lips will blow up when they taste it, and they'll know they have an allergy. So yeah, I think shellfish is another important allergy, and you have to avoid them.
And the other line of defense, it seems to me, and I finally put this in my phone about changing the air filters in my house, because you walk through the big box stores, and now they're all bundled. They're not cheap. And it is kind of a racket, but I think to myself, what would I rather do, be breathing cleaner air? And when I look at the filter, when I change it, I'm trying to do it minimally every 4 months, so 3 times a year. And I look at that and I think, well, that's a line of defense for all of us in the house, right? To kind of clean air up.
In addition to the clean air, all the furnace specialists will tell you that the furnace doesn't work as hard when it's that clogged. So 3-4 times a year is nothing wrong with that. That's important.
As we head towards spring of this new year, seasonal allergies would be a thing for us to be on guard for.
Right.
Anything else? Any other lines of defense we should be thinking about proactively?
Think we mentioned a little bit of the over-counter medications. The nasal corticosteroids are very good. You don't overuse them. They're not the same as the nasal sprays we use for decongestants, but the nasal corticosteroids.
That's an over-the-counter thing?
Yep. Oh. And those are very good to be used. Not very often.
Yeah.
But during that few days where it's really bad, very helpful. And corticosteroids are still the mainstay of treatment for allergic asthma, for instance. We use a lot of those for that. And there is a big component of asthma that is allergic.
And your advice for that extreme case, and I know they're out there, where someone has a kid in the family, a dad in the family, that's anaphylaxis can become a thing. You've got to have the break the glass, this is an emergency kit ready, right?
In every corner. Yeah. Every place you go, I'd put an EpiPen.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and people used to ask me, if you were on a desert island, what one medication would you take? I would say epinephrine.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really that. I mean, you give somebody who's having a severe allergic reaction or a anaphylactic reaction, you give them epinephrine, they respond right away. It's really,
and if not, it's life-threatening.
It's absolutely life-threatening, yep.
Yeah.
So have your EpiPens, carry them with you, keep them wherever you're going to be, because the most common is somebody comes in with anaphylaxis or a severe allergic reaction. Well, don't you have an EpiPen? Well, yeah, I didn't, but it wasn't where I was. It's just the way luck goes, that things aren't where they are, where we need them. So,
any other final thoughts about this?
No, I think that as ever, it's really good to have these conversations with your family doctor about what's serious, what isn't, when to see an allergist, what things are good over the counter, and really keep an eye out for the anaphylaxis.
Yeah, and I think this idea of which, we've got 5 kids and now 8 grandkids, but I'm thinking getting them into peanut butter, this test, this whole being proactive is a whole new idea that I've never thought about.
It's a new idea. It's a new protocol.
Yeah.
We have to be careful with it. So I think that the message with that is to talk that over.
Professional guidance.
With your pediatrician or your family doctor, because they've studied it. They know what the literature says. They know the right protocols to follow.
Yeah. Well, all good stuff. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Dr. Michael Kobernick with us today. We want to thank him and thank you for listening to A Healthier Michigan podcast. If you like our show, you want to know more, check out ahealthiermichigan.org/podcast. Give us a rating, share the podcast, or leave a comment. And also let us know what you think or what we should talk about next. You could have some influence there. Subscribe and favorite us wherever you listen. We hope we gave you a tip or two to stay healthy today. Until next time, be well.